Hey all, here at OS Reviews, you're watching our hands-on review of the Servo S08. This is a fidget spinner phone, so it's a real cell phone. It's a feature phone at that, so it doesn't have any smartphone capabilities, but it takes a SIM card, makes calls, you can send text messages, has a color display, but it has this fidget spinner along with the ball bearings built on in, so you can actually spin it in your hands when you're not making phone calls. It's pretty crazy, but it's also a really low-cost device. In fact, it sells for around $15, so as a secondary emergency phone, maybe you should put into a car. As something really small, it's actually not a bad idea. Now, of course, the fad of fidget spinners has pretty much come and gone, but we've already seen some accessories for phones in the past that have attempted to put a physical ring onto the back, and it actually dubs as a fidget spinner in its own right, and you can also wear it like this and then spin the entire phone around and then use different types of wallpapers to create visualizations with the display. But this is a much more contained unit. It's not an accessory, it's a phone in its own right. It seems like there's also maybe a basic game built in, and maybe there's a ability to play back movies on here. It says MP4 player, MP3 players. We have just the fidget spinner phone on top. We'll take a closer look in a second. Down below here, there is just the charging adapter, which simply uses micro USB, as you can see there. So very standard stuff. And there's also a user guide. That is it. So very simple presentation here. Alright, so taking a look at just the S08, first impressions, it's actually heavier than I originally thought it would be. It seems like the body is actually made out of aluminum on the edges and plastic on the back. So it has a nice heft to it. It's definitely a lot heavier than you think. It's not a completely plastic device. All of these rings are made out of aluminum. The holder here is also made out of metal, and just doing an initial spin here. So we have very small keys and buttons on the bottom here, almost petite and toy-like, but it's a T9 layout which enables you to text, but pretty slowly, using predictive input. And on the bottom there's just the micro USB for charging, and on the back there is just the loud speaker. And the back cover opens with a small lid to have access to 2 SIM cards. That's very interesting on such a small phone. It's a dual SIM device, so you can have 2 numbers in at the same time, and one also serves as a micro SD card. This one does not have a built-in camera, so you won't be snapping any images. Not that you would really want to on such a small device anyways. I can tap on the power key for a few seconds to see if it's going to turn on in the charging mode. And this is the boot sequence. A very small LCD screen, but it's functional. And you can probably remove these caps as well if you want to look at the ball bearings inside. It says charging. We're going to exit. This doesn't have a traditional D-pad for going left, right, up, and down, since that space is occupied by the holder for the spinner. So for navigating direction-wise, that's going to be quite challenging. What's interesting is the viewing angles of the display actually aren't that bad, so it's probably even an IPS screen, just really small, and you have this icon layout that doesn't seem like it's very easy to use intuitively since there's no D-pad, but these small chrome keys actually just go left and right, and they cycle through the entire interface one at a time. I can also go back using the other key, so it's slightly easier to press. You can select things with these 2 keys on the top here, which are completely flush, and there's even a voice recorder, so that's an interesting little feature. We also have a very basic MP3 player, although you would want to connect it to Bluetooth if you want to listen to music. And under games, there's really only one title, which is Tetris, but at least it's there. So you can see that we have this moving cube. I can go left and right using these switches, and use the D-pad here, such as pressing number 2 to rotate it, and then again go left and right. So it's playable, but it's slightly different than having a regular D-pad on the display. And again, it's a pretty classic game that is built right on in, but there isn't Snake built in. So again, this isn't a Nokia device. You can save your score, you can take a look at help, etc. There's also under applications a few other online apps such as Twitter, WhatsApp. There's also Facebook, and some other basic utilities like an alarm and a world clock, as well as a calendar. So you may be wondering, well, what does Facebook and Twitter do? Well, basically, they take you to mobile versions of the web browser. Since there isn't Wi-Fi, it's going to be using your data plan, and it will load, but it's nowhere near as ideal as having a smartphone, obviously, but at least it is built on in. And again, Twitter just takes you to that mobile version, which does load, but pretty slowly over only 2G/3G networks, so be sure to wait for a while. However, it is functional, and you can also use the basic web browser to look up quick news, weather updates, things like that if you have to, and it is built on in. There's also a calendar on here. This is what that looks like. and there's just the browser, which we already saw with the Twitter mobile app. So overall, the interface is surprisingly functional, but it is pretty tedious to use, mainly because there isn't that regular D-pad. Even so, I found that the buttons were just a little bit too small, especially the left and right keys and the OK keys that's sandwiched in between this giant holder for the spinner, and that makes navigation a little bit difficult. You definitely don't want to use this as your daily device unless you're giving it to a kid with really small fingers, but as a backup phone, it will suffice for making quick dials, things like that. Phone call quality, I tried it out quickly with T-Mobile here in the Seattle region. I got roughly 3 bars of reception. What is pretty cool though is once the unit is turned on and you have these wallpapers, as you start spinning it, you get a light up pattern, which could be kind of fun to play around with, like this one right now, especially if we dim the lights. It is pretty mesmerizing. As far as spinners go, it definitely isn't the longest lasting one, so in terms of the spin duration, I roughly got slightly under 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes on a single spin if I try to flick very quickly and then held it still in this position. So it's not going to stretch to 5 minutes or 10 minutes like some crazy spinners on the market. If you're looking for the longest spin duration, it's not going to be it. But then again, its main selling point is just the fact that it has both a spinner and a phone. So it doesn't work the best as either, but when combined, it makes for a pretty interesting novelty product. All right, so if we change it to some of the other, menus, such as this one right here, you can see how it changes the pattern of the spin. Then another one. So again, it does cast some pretty interesting looking patterns as you are using it. It definitely is a pretty cool spinner just because it has this built-in display. And the construction quality also really isn't bad. There's quite a few metal accents, so it feels quite hefty in the hand. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the fidget spinner phone is concerned by Servo. Overall, I would say that it's more of a gimmick. The same price, you can probably pick up a better feature phone, one that has a larger D-pad, so easier navigation and a built-in camera. This one doesn't have one, but it has all the basics such as calling, texting, and a basic interface that allows you to play back a few Java-based games, as well as to navigate through MP3s and MP4s without too many issues, as well as again having this really unique spinner form factor. So thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews.